Welcome back to Spirit Portal. You are here with me, Erika, and today we have a really special guest that I'm so excited about. Not just because I'm excited to share her amazing wisdom with you, but because she is such a dear friend of mine and someone I truly love and admire and has been in my life for a very long time. And that is Wendy Stern. Hi, Wendy.
Hi, Erica. So nice
So
to be
good to
here.
have you here. So glad to have you. Wendy is someone really special for so many different reasons. And I could really talk about all of your virtues all day long. But the reason why I wanted to have you on the podcast, Wendy, is the work that you do, the experiences that you've had in life, and the way that you bring healing and authenticity to everything in the forefront of your personal relationships, but what you do professionally. And Wendy is a somatic grief therapist. She has runs a company. I don't know is it a company?
Sure.
A
Yeah.
nonprofit,
Business. No,
the
not
Center
non.
for Somatic Grieving. And I'm going to let you describe what you do. And when you're describing what you do, if you could talk about how you would like how you identify yourself, like how you like to present yourself into the world, because I think you're going to have words for it better than what I do.
Okay. Thank you, Erica. I just want to say what an honor it is to be here and to, especially because it's with you and to engage in this conversation. So my background is as a yoga therapist for, God, 24 years. And my work took a radical shift about 16 years ago when I lost my son. And before I lost Noah, I had the amazing opportunity to witness through my private practice the way that our emotions manifest in our bodies, and just the direct, powerful connection between inviting people to notice the sensations in their body, how that connects to what they're feeling, how that connects their thoughts and their spirit, and how profoundly healing it was by kind of connecting all these pieces together. And most importantly, holding a container for people, a safe space for them to explore themselves. So that's kind of my professional background. When I lost my son, I started applying these skills, these tools to my own grieving process. It actually started with myself. Went to my yoga mat to explore and to honestly to feel what was happening. And over the years, I've gathered new tools in my life, both personally as well as professionally, of using the realm of somatics for me with a yoga therapy foundation and to guide people through a grief process. The interesting thing about grief is there's not a fix or a solution or something that we can like make someone better, but these tools are powerful ways to move through the feelings, um, to release, to expand, and ultimately it opens the door for our personal growth work, which is, I imagine, a part of where our conversation will go. So.
Definitely where a part of our conversation will go. And I'm curious about the journey for you through the grieving process, because where you are now, you're on the other side of the deep abyss of that traumatic experience of grieving. And that length of time is different for everybody. But I recognize you now as being your friend and watching you grow through this process. How that time can go through so many different experiences in your grieving process. I think about the profound changes that I've seen watching you and the way that you've helped people navigate. What is it that made you want to start being a guide for other people? What is it that was calling to you that felt so powerful that you needed to honor it to help other people through their grieving process?
What a beautiful question. Well, I'll say it wasn't for me, it wasn't like a hit over the head one day, like I need to help people. In the beginning, it started out as so much just a way to help myself.
Yeah.
And And those two things are so deeply intertwined. I've learned over the years that it's such a natural response to loss to make meaning out of something, terrible that's happened. I know for myself, it started out as a desire to like create some goodness, to create some light, to create something positive out of something that was just so wrong. And that was honestly just survival to get through the day. Um, and I think soon after that, I started a nonprofit organization. I'll just name that the Grief Support Network came before the Center for Somatic Grieving. And what I wanted was connection. I wanted to feel connected in my experience. Grief can be so lonely, and I wanted to be with other people. I wanted to try and make someone's heart a little lighter by connecting them with services and support people that could help. In the beginning, I really just wanted to create connection for myself and for anyone else who was grieving. Um, I also like needed to tell my story. There was something profoundly healing in the beginning about telling my story of losing Noah and the impact on my life. Then I got to feel the impact on people around me, their lives. And it was like there was something in that that was just validating that his life and death had meaning, which I desperately needed. So where I began was like, what does my heart need to get through this? It needs community. It needs it needs a space to share and to kind of have it be real. Because when someone dies, it could feel like in a flash, like they're gone,
Yeah.
like they disappear. So that's where it began. But over the years, it became a calling to to bring together the tools that I had learned over the years, professionally as well as personally, to help other people. And I found that when I was sitting with people and supporting them, or sitting in a circle with a group, that I got to witness and feel the reflections of myself and other people, which again was so validating and so connecting. And then I got to see the ways that they would either feel better or move through to a new phase or fall in love with themselves, which is what I actually see most days, which is beautiful.
And you
And
have an incredible capacity for holding space for people and for allowing people to show up with whatever energy, with whatever heart, with whatever emotion that they're feeling. And that is one of your greatest gifts as a friend, but as a professional, um, as a yoga therapist, as a somatic therapist, as a grief, counselor, if you will. Um, but do you feel like you had that when you were going through such profound loss?
do you mean did I have that for myself, for people, or did I have that from somebody else?
Did you have that as a member of a community? Did you have that in our culture? Did you have that in the way that when I see you interacting with people who are grieving, you go towards them. You
Mhm,
go towards them. You don't run away from the intense emotional pain. And
mhm.
when you lost Noah, you and I were not friends at that time. I did not know you. And I'm curious, like, when you lost him, did you have people that came to you in your place of grief? Because I remember how you went to Bali, how you left the culture, like you felt like you needed something different. And I'm curious if that was part of the development of the Grief Support Network and then the Center for Somatic Grieving.
Oh, yeah, it was such a part of it. And it all happened kind of along the way. I think immediately when, this big tragic event happened, like the community rallied, the community showed up and leaned in. I was blessed to have such a beautiful community, still do. But everyone kind of freaked out, right? Like everybody was grieving their own grief. And it was really complicated to be in other people's grief who knew him and loved him and knew and loved both Brian and I. And it was like heavy, it was thick. It was hard to feel just fully held in that without everyone else's grief too.
Mhm.
So when we left the country and went to Bali and Thailand, it was such a radical shift in not only the feeling of having a space where my emotions could just be there, but it was really the way people related to us. And it was so profound to remember the way that people weren't afraid of our grief. And
Yeah.
because of that, they leaned in towards us. And I feel like I've said these words so many times, but they're still so true around just their culture's comfort with death, recognizing it as a part of life.
And
And
I wonder if some of that has to do with like the belief systems and the spiritual understanding is so different than other, monotheistic or Christian based cultures where we believe in life and death. And life after death is a different concept, right?
oh my God,
Um,
it is. And I
yeah.
got to go back there this summer. And it was so wild this past June. I spent a month in Bali, hadn't been there for 16 years. And it was so validating. I was like, oh my God, everything I felt there is still true. And I went and did another like layer of my grief in my current self. And I still felt so met and held, um, and validated in what I was feeling.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of wisdom there. There's a lot we can learn.
There is a lot we can learn. And a lot of the people that listen to this podcast are people who have experienced deep grief and loss. And obviously, we all experience grief and loss because dying is a natural part of living these human lives.
Mhm.
But some people have an experience that feels before time or unnatural or a profound loss that is different than a different type of loss, and a lot of those people have what we would call is like a spiritual awakening
Mhm.
from this incredible loss. And
Mhm.
I'm curious if you can talk about what that journey has been like for you, as I know how spiritual you are and the deep connection that you still have to Noah now. And I would love to hear about that part of your journey.
Thank you. I'm like beaming because even the language of spiritual awakening, I had an experience in Bali where that was really named for me. And it kind of opened the door for me to have full recognition of like what's really transpired over all these years. And I want to share just a little piece of this conversation with this healer because, and some of you out there might feel this way too. When someone like names something that we kind of know or feel, it can give us so much permission to actually acknowledge and to feel it as truth. And so I had this beautiful experience of going to a water temple in Bali with my family, Beijing Kriya water temple. It was a waterfall temple, and we had this 4-hour experience of meditation and making prayers and blessings and being under these waterfalls, like washing away what needed to go. And it was just this like very profound experience, not only for myself, I was with my husband and my 2 daughters. And after this, we each did a healing session. My 2 daughters went first, and then I went with this healer. Before she even read anything about me or I said a word, she looked at me and she started to cry. And she said to me, she said, oh, if I had a wish for you, it's that you might have been able to find yourself sooner and you wouldn't have had to lose your son in order to have a spiritual awakening.
Mm.
And that landed in me as such like truth, and validation of kind of what I've been through. Um, And it's hard to put language to like what the awakening is, but if I could encapsulate it somehow, it has been a process of knowing myself, of learning to love myself, and cultivating deep acceptance of myself.
And that's
Um,
such a beautiful personal experience. And one of the most profound experiences that we hope to have, not the loss part, but the deep acceptance of who we are as our human selves.
Mhm.
Um, when you reflect on that and you reflect on the experience that you've gone through after Noah left this earth, what do you think about his experience? What do you feel about his relationship to your experience?
Oh, I love this question.
Mm.
I feel him like beaming towards me. I feel his pride in the path I've chosen, I feel Noah working through me all the time. I feel his light. And that's one thing about this little being. He came into the world very auspiciously, and his whole 9 months here was profound. And he came in as a being of light. And I feel like for a long time, I didn't recognize myself. I felt like it was him moving through me, like it was always Noah. It wasn't like I didn't totally know my own light for many years. But through my grief, through my own, I think, journey with this, I've come to see that as a reflection of myself. And Noah opened me to life. He opened me to love. He opened me to like holding sacred space for people to feel deep pain, but through that, hopefully, deep love. And I feel like he came in as a teacher, and I feel that he is like everywhere and and stays pretty close to me personally, and is I mean, I kind of get to have my own personal angel. Um,
Yeah.
but I feel him doing his work, um, kind of, I don't know, maybe through me or next to me all the time.
Some people believe and talk about something called soul contracts. Have you heard of that?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And do you feel like it's always a little bit tentative for me to say something like this to someone who has lost a child. And so it's a question. It's not an assumption, and it's not what my belief is. I'm just asking what you feel. But do you feel like it's possible that the way he came in and the way that he continues to work through you and the way that you feel him in such profound love was part of his path, like living a short life?
I mean, I appreciate your sensitivity around it, but I'll say 100%. And I'd like to kind of expand on it because I think this
Please.
would be helpful for other people, because it actually was one of the real pivotal moments in my grieving process and in my healing process. Like when I kind of was able to work through some of those initial phases of such intense denial, resistance, anger, so many big feelings. What actually helped me to shift was leaning into this idea of a soul contract. And what I believe is that my humanness would have never agreed to this. I mean, whose would, right? But that
Right.
Noah and I, our souls decided this before we were in our bodies, and that we did create a contract around how we would be, and that him coming and staying for a short period of time and then leaving had to happen for his path to be what it was. And the piece that I don't often share, but it feels okay here about Noah, is that when he was born, something happened in his spine, in his development. And we didn't know this till he was a little bit older, but that like he was going to be constricted. Like his spirit was so big that I don't think that his body was ever going to be able to contain, especially his body that wasn't going to work properly, um, wasn't going to be able to contain that. And that I believe that he knew that he could do his job better the way he needed to from the other side of the veil than from here. And I believe that my soul agreed to all of this before I came in, for me to be who I am growing to be because of Noah coming, because of him leaving, and because of learning about life and death and the way that I have through him. So, yeah, I believe in soul contracts, and it's given me a lot of peace to not only believe that we both chose this, but to also believe that it was all for the greater good, for myself, for Noah, and for so many other people, that his soul has had impact and will continue to.
His whole has had so much impact. I look at the relationships that you have built. I look at the capability that you have expanded so much to be able to hold grief for other people and walk them through it is because of the relationship that you have had continuously with Noah and his life and his death as much of his life, but also his continuance of life after his death has had such a profound impact on thousands of people. And so even the gratitude I have towards Noah is huge because of the blessing that you've had in my life to help me understand the authenticity of feelings and emotions, and being able to feel safe in them. And that's a process that a lot of people never really um, get to experience because so many people are so afraid of big feelings. And so to be able to um, give thanks for Noah, even on that small level for me personally, is a profound gift that he's shared with so many of us. When you talk that way, I think about when I'm in readings with people. And when people come to me for readings, it's because they're in grief and loss, and they want to connect with their loved one who has crossed over. And and at that time, talking about soul contracts isn't a very appropriate thing. I'm just there to share the message, but understanding the trauma aspect of the phases of grief would be something that would be helpful, I feel, for a lot of the people that listen to this show, because so many of us are working with people in grief and don't know how to communicate with them. Um, I think about sometimes when I'm doing a reading and I'm channeling someone in spirit and they're speaking through me, whatever they say is what my voice is explaining to them, and everything is smooth and makes sense. But then when Erika comes back on and I am sitting with someone in deep grief in front of me, I really have to go into my tools to make sure that I don't re-trigger or cause harm. And so I thought maybe that could be something that you could talk about, is understanding some of the different phases of grief and what is appropriate or inappropriate in some of those phases for people to be supportive.
It's a great question. Well, I want to kind of back into this a certain way and start by saying it's always about meeting people where they are. And so that will keep you, kind of, that'll keep it safe, is to
Yeah.
meet people where they are, because there are different phases of grief, but it's not linear. It's quite circular. And what people's are experiencing on the inside isn't always 100% represented on the outside. Sometimes people can't articulate or even name the different feelings. So where it really begins is creating a space that's safe, and that's true for trauma or for anything relating to grief, is to create a space where people feel safe, and people feel safe when they feel 100% accepted in whatever they're feeling. So from the shoot, creating a container, creating some guidelines so that people can rest in, letting them know that there's not a right or wrong way to feel or to be, giving such permission for whatever comes up in this space, whatever they're feeling, whether it feels good to them or bad to them, whether it's their shadow or their light, to kind of name that. So when sitting with someone in grief, there's a little bit of almost like front loading on like setting the context for them to share. So it starts with safety. And then as we go, we just keep meeting people where they are. If someone is in a moment of total kind of collapse or despair or can't find the light, we just meet them there and support them to not be okay in that moment, to feel all the darkness or whatever it is, to keep leaning in towards the feelings and the sensations and the thoughts. Um, and if someone's in a moment of expansion and elation, we meet them there. People don't think about celebration when you're sitting with someone who's grieving, or think about joy or gratitude. But that's a part of it too. The other side of grief is love and gratitude. So meeting people in those moments of joy and expansion, like there's moments of like clarity where all of a sudden you think you like get it all, those are moments that we can lean in and celebrate together.
That's so beautiful to acknowledge that aspect too. And I feel like sometimes, and maybe I'm wrong, but there's an experience of guilt with feeling elation or feeling like I understand why this happened or how I can live again. Have you noticed that?
Oh, it's so big. Guilt can be such an interesting underbelly, right? Guilt in being happy, like guilt in like kind of forgetting about it for a moment and feeling normal, guilt in moving forward in your life. And I'm not saying moving on, but moving forward.
Mhm.
Guilt in finding love and joy. Yeah, it can feel like it is discrediting or forgetting about your loved one rather than taking all that love that you feel for them and bringing it forward into your life. But the guilt makes sense. It can feel like a forgetting about, even if though that's not happening, it's just human nature that we can feel these things.
In some cultures, we feel guilt more than others. You know, there's Catholic guilt. I grew up Catholic, and so there's a lot of guilt about too happy, too sad, doing the right thing, doing the wrong thing. But that brings me to like the somatic aspect of what you're doing, the somatic support. And for people who don't even know what somatic means, can you talk about that and about emotions being in the body and explain that to someone who may not know?
Totally. And I can, without getting very textbook around it, I could break it down to its simplest form. And that is the way that we feel. When I say somatic grieving, I'm talking about feeling our grief in our bodies. And the reason why somatic work can be so impactful with grieving is that grief is held in our cells. We can try to work it out in our minds, but eventually we need to drop down to where the grief is actually being held inside of us, which is in the cells of our bodies. And so when we talk about somatic grieving, we are going in and exploring and paying attention to the different sensations that we feel in our bodies. And then from there, we can connect in with like, what is the emotion that I actually feel in this place? What is the emotion of my grief? And then from there, we can connect in with the different thoughts that we're having and invite our spiritual self to come in and to have awareness around it. So the somatic component, it drops us down in to this so we can touch it, so we can feel it. One of my favorite little sayings is what we resist persists. So it's a way to feel into where are those places of resistance, where is it existing so that we can feel it. And the thing about feeling it, it doesn't mean it like disappears, right? It's not like, oh, I felt it, it's gone now, but it does create a shift.
Have you
Um,
found that some people are so deeply afraid of their emotions that they resist going into that space because it's so terrifying? I feel like in our culture, there's so much work to be done around even just being okay, having a terrible, terrible feeling inside of yourself. So we fight the feeling so much. So how do you work with someone when they are resisting it?
Well, you work with them by acknowledging that they're in resistance and holding them in the resistance, right? Holding them in the not wanting to go there. And that's okay. Many people, most people are resistant to feeling the full impact of their grief because it's so painful. And this is another important piece of it. We have defense mechanisms. We have coping strategies. And so for most of us, all of us, I'd say, we build defenses where we don't feel it. It's like on purpose, right? Because in the beginning, for most of us, that if we were to feel the full impact of the loss, especially if it's traumatic, it would be more than our system could handle and it wouldn't serve us. So we create um, these defense mechanisms that actually keep us from feeling it. That's why when people in acute grief, they feel like they're in a fog. It can feel hazy. You could feel really ungrounded. It's literally there's a buffer that comes up between you and the event that's happened and all the feelings, right? So what can happen over time is that our defense mechanisms, they work so well and they're so wise and they're so loving, but they can stay on longer than they're useful. So some of my work with people is helping them to gently begin to bump up against those defense mechanisms, those strategies, that armor of protection, and to gently and on their timing, not mine, begin to kind of move through that and to begin to feel. And sometimes it's like, wow, I felt my pinky finger today. That was huge, right? Because we can become numb and disconnected as a way to survive. And that's not wrong. It's actually brilliant in our bodies. But over time, we often need support in kind of moving some of that armor away so that we can feel.
I
So,
think that's such a beautiful way of saying it, like gently bumping up against their defense mechanisms to unravel it on their own time, not on your time. Like that is such a healing way to allow someone to process through their grief and through their loss and whatever experience is happening because of it. That's so profound. And without expectation or even something that they have to fit inside, because I feel like that's something else that I see from my perspective with people in grief is they almost feel like they have to be a certain way, or there's an expectation for them to be acting a certain way, and it feels uncomfortable to feel judged
mhm.
and feels minimizing to feel that judgment. And if you were to talk to someone right now who's listening to this and who is in an acute or even not acute phase of grief, an experience of grief, what kind of words would you share with them about where they might be at and where they could feel hope, or even if it's not hope, even just acceptance, or you know the words more than I do, share away.
Yeah, I think there is something about hope. I'll just say I think that is an appropriate hope. It can be a lifeline for someone. I know for me, I had my mom who had lost a child. I lost my sister, and seeing that she was okay helped me believe I'd be okay too. So I think hope is powerful. Um, and I would also say to this person that it's a journey and that there is no guidebook for this on how we do it. It requires a lot of deep listening to ourselves and what we need, and it's almost a teacher in learning how to honor our needs. I don't think I knew how to do that for myself before I had a loss. It was always about other people. Um, so in some ways, it's profoundly illuminating, and there are good days and there are bad days. There are
Mhm.
days where you feel okay, like I've got this, and there are days where you just want to crumble into a puddle and hide under the covers. And I want to say both of those days are okay. And that and that it is in some ways a time in your life where you really get a hall pass. I say this to my clients all the time. You get a hall pass for whatever it is you need. You need to be alone. You need to be with people. You need to be busy. You need to be still. You need to cry. You need to distract. That it's a time of learning how to really, really honor yourself and honor your needs. And it's a space to cultivate acceptance of that.
So, what is the work that you're doing right now? What is like your offering into the world right now, with where you are and what you've gone through and what your heart wants to share?
Mm. Well, it's certainly been a process. Here's where I'm sitting right now, today. I'll say that.
Mhm.
I recently started working with private clients again after many years of not, and it's really filling my cup. It feels really beautiful to have that kind of intimacy and to go so deep with one individual and to kind of follow them through their journey. So that's a piece of what I'm doing. I feel where I've had the most impact has been in group work, in facilitation, and in space holding in the larger collective, recognizing that connection is such a big part of supporting someone through grief. So I love the group spaces. I lead teacher trainings. This is probably how I feel the most impactful in the world is training um, other yoga professionals who are interested in supporting people through loss in a mindful grieving curriculum that I created um, to help this to spread, to help this work to be shared in different parts of the world. That feels really alive in me and exciting. I offer a training virtually as well as one in person on Maui next year. Um, The other piece is retreat work. I stepped into this about 5, 6, 7 years ago, and it has probably been the most like personally satisfying thing I've done because it's a space to go so deep, to open and stay open.
Mhm.
Um, and Maui just fills my cup personally in just about every way. And then I also want to just name the Mindful Grieving 9-month program, which is a journey. We meet weekly. We have a small cohort or group that we go through the journey with. It's a space to not only grieve and to feel your grief, but to really learn about yourself. It is a personal growth journey and touches on everything from our relationship to ourself, our worthiness, to the way grief serves as a teacher to our own identity and how that evolves and changes with loss. So these are the different ways that I'm kind of sharing this. And
That's
I love
beautiful.
collaboration. I also love working with other beautiful people.
Do you feel like working in the group environment for people who are going through loss or grief is a very supportive way for other people to get in touch with their spirit and themselves and the experience of who they are becoming as they have lost someone in their life?
I think it's powerful. I have two things to say about it. One is I think it can give you something you don't get alone, and that is the power of being witnessed in your authentic experience. When we're witnessing our experience and it's reflected back to us, um, it allows us to see and know ourselves. So it can give a lot of clarity and validation to what we feel. So that's a piece of it. And I will say that when people are in very, very recent acute grief, sometimes it can be too soon to be in a communal space because when we're grieving, we can become very porous. We may sometimes have a big shield in front of us, but we can also be more like receptive or vulnerable, and that allows like other people's grief to come in. And for some people, that's just too much to take in someone else's experience as you're managing your own. So
That makes so much sense.
I
Yeah.
think it's a timing thing, and it's just so profoundly personal where you're at. There's not a
Yeah.
rule that in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, at that in that acute experience of so much pain, that's when you just need to be held and not
Mm,
to hold someone else, right?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
I um I just am so proud of you and the work that you do. I'm so honored and blessed to be your friend and to experience you as a friend and as someone I respect. And I just want to talk to that a little bit because I really want people to understand that the way that you are speaking is who you are. And that this work that you do is an embodiment um, of what you are of what your spirit is. And it is a constant transformation and a constant evolution and a constant, I see you contract as any normal person and needing time to like go within and to feel and to experience what you're experiencing. But I see you expand more than most other people as well. And um, that's because you absorb the energy of those around you to reflect it back to help them heal. And I do feel that that is this powerful relationship that you have with your son Noah that is makes it possible for you to do that work, to bring forward so much healing for so many people. And so I really just want to encourage our listeners to look into what you're doing and to who you are and what you're offering because there's a lot of room for heart expansion and soul growth in the grieving process. And Wendy Stern here is such a beautiful example of what can be possible on the other side, or as you walk through this experience. And like you said before, everyone is different, and our journeys are different, and why we're here is different, right? But there is hope and there is more that can be found in your life, and going in that grieving process feels so alone and so scary and so dark. And um, just reach out to Wendy and look to her for someone who maybe can point you into a few directions. Do you want to speak on anything to that?
I'm just so honored. Thank you for seeing me. That is your superpower, my friend.
Yeah.
It is seeing people. And that means the world. It feels so good to feel so seen. And I think the one piece I want to respond to, and again, I'm just taking in your beautiful reflection, is really the art of reflection. And I think I know my experience of losing Noah, or having and losing Noah, it kind of it opened up something in me to be able to receive people and to be able to reflect their light back to them. And that's where I have the most joy in my life, is doing that, because I'm so in awe of just how beautiful we are as humans. And I do fall in love with every single person I sit with.
And you
Um,
do. I know this about you.
but what I love, what I'm loving even more at this moment is supporting other facilitators to do that too, to find their own authentic way of taking someone in and then reflecting back to them who they are.
Mhm.
Um, that has just been becoming very kind of gratifying and a special part of my professional life.
Do
Um,
you think you will write a book and tell your story and bring people into your orbit in that way?
Oh, that's the question of the day. In process, yes,
Yeah.
I have a deep desire to share my story, and I'll say I haven't been ready to do that until now. But I am ready now, and I look forward to sharing more. Thank you for the
Yeah.
question.
Well, and I think that you're constantly reliving your experience and constantly um, talking about the grieving process and the loss of your son. And I imagine it's sometimes in some ways that's uh, in the past, especially been something triggering. And at the same time, it's that trigger has been a propelling of expansion and wanting more healing and then learning how to help others. Would you agree with that?
I mean, yeah, and I want to speak to this for a moment. There are so many layers and so many parts of this. I think the reason I haven't been ready to tell my story until now is that I had such a profound experience in Bali this summer. There was such a full circle that I feel I have the ability to step back and to tell in a way where I'm less like enmeshed and deeply intertwined in it. Even though the story continues, I mean, who knows where it ends, right? But in terms of like the depths of it, the depths of losing him and what transpired, I also don't think my husband was ready for me to tell it until now. So that's
Right.
a
And
valid, important part. But I want to share something that happened in Bali that is kind of launching me. And I think this will be helpful for your listeners too. Okay. Um, how do I keep this short? Okay. One of the things I did on retreat, I took a group on retreat to Bali. One of the things we did is we went to this water temple, a different water temple that I went to with my family. And we had this day of really like letting go. That was the theme, of letting go of whatever we were ready or needing to let go of. And again, we were in there's different waters that got poured over us and that kind of washed it away. And I had this moment of recognition and a big emotion that it wasn't Noah that I was letting go of, that it wasn't my grief that I was letting go of, didn't want to let go of that, that it was really my fear, and my fear around life, my fear around my children's safety, around my safety, that it was just this fear that was holding me back, that was crippling me with anxiety, that it was just time and I was ready to let that go.
mm,
And I think that some reason opened the door for me feeling ready to share things on a larger scale. That fear was like the block. That
yeah.
fear was, made me feel unsafe. And with the fear gone, things have changed.
Yeah. And I see that and I believe that. And I just want to point out one thing that you said, that you weren't letting go of your grief.
Mhm,
You weren't letting go of Noah. You were letting go of fear. And that's such a different journey.
mhm,
Like you don't have to let go of your grief. You don't have to let go of your fear. And I feel like that is part of the trauma that people in grief are experiencing, thinking that they have to let go of their grief when their grief is the love that they have for the person they lost.
That's it. My grief is my love, and that's the way I talk about it. My grief is an expression of my love, and I don't wanna ever let go of that, nor do I wanna let go of the way I feel, Noah. I wanna let go of, like I said, the fear
The fear.
of what the fear of losing again, which is the most natural thing in the world after you've lost, right?
Mm,
'Cause I wanna live, and when you're crippled in fear, it's hard to live.
right.
So
Do you think
that's
that that's going to have to be something that you remind yourself of a lot?
Oh, yeah. I mean, totally,
Yeah.
totally. It's like I went to Bali and I came back and I'm, like, totally cured of all my anxiety. I mean, it hasn't quite been that immediate, but I do think that it is a practice, and this is my little plug for meditation.
Yes.
And meditation practice is my reminder.
Yeah.
Sitting with myself for even just 10 minutes every morning, that's how I remember to let go
Yep.
of my that's how I remember that I'm safe in my life.
And that's how you create a new pattern of remembering,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Because we can have these beautiful awakenings, and then we're going to be challenged in life because that's the nature of life, and we choose if we want to tap into the energy of what has come into us, like that new awakening and awareness, or tap into the old patterns of whatever they may be. And meditation is a great tool for alignment into the truth that you want to experience.
Oh, it so is. It illuminates our shadow as well as our light.
Mhm.
And with awareness, we can, you know, find wholeness in ourselves, and learn to love all the parts which are all valid and have a right to be, rather than, how we can become so kind of disintegrated when we put parts of ourselves away because they don't feel acceptable, right? They don't
Right.
feel so in meditation, we get to look at all the different things, our thoughts, our feelings, and get to just sit and acknowledge that. It's amazing the power of noticing without having to do anything with what we observe. So
Beautiful. Yeah. Wendy, can you tell people how they can find you?
sure. My website's the most direct way. This Center for it's centerforsomaticgrieving.com. It's a mouthful, but it's exactly like it sounds. You are so welcome to email me at Wendy at centerforsomaticgrieving.com. My Instagram is Center for Somatic Grieving. I love connection. Anyone who wants to just hop on a 30-minute Zoom to connect, I offer that as a complimentary offering to just get to know each other and to hear where you are and to offer any resources or direction. Um, and yeah, I would love to connect with anyone who feels called to.
That's wonderful. And please check Wendy out. I just have so much love and gratitude and respect for you. And I just want to thank everyone for tuning in to this episode of Spirit Portal, and have a beautiful day.
Thank you so